Rain-slicked streets reflected the neon glow of city lights, turning Philadelphia into a river of color, fractured and shifting with every passing car. It was late, almost too late, and yet Caroline Whitman, an elegant woman in her early 40s, dressed in a tailored navy coat and designer heels, couldn't tear herself away from the scene unfolding before her. She had built her life with meticulous care. A career as a venture capitalist, a mansion on Chestnut Street, charity foundations bearing her name. Everything in her world was controlled, predictable. And yet here she was, heart hammering, palms damp against the leather of her clutch, standing in a drizzle that refused to soak her completely, as if the city itself was holding its breath. The scream had come first. A high, shrill cry, sharp and sudden, cutting through the constant hum of traffic and rain. Caroline had turned, instinct overriding instinctual caution, and there on the sidewalk was a girl no older than 10, her face pale and wet from the rain. She clutched a small, tattered backpack to her chest, trembling as if the storm outside was nothing compared to the tempest within her. Ma'am, please," the girl said, her voice shaking. I know that missing child." Caroline froze. The words hit her like a bullet, a shock that reverberated through her chest. She had read about it in the papers, every parent in the city had. Little Lucy Branson, 8 years old, vanished from her own front yard 3 nights ago. A helicopter hovered overhead earlier that evening. Search teams had combed the park near Rittenhouse Square, canvassed neighborhoods, and questioned anyone who might have seen anything. And now, this rain-soaked child was looking at her with desperate eyes, as if Caroline herself held the answer to every parent's nightmare. I don't understand," Caroline said, her voice catching. She crouched slightly, trying to make herself less intimidating, aware of the expensive shoes sinking slightly into the wet pavement. You know Lucy." The girl nodded. "I know where she is. I can find her, but they'll hurt me if I tell anyone." Her voice dropped to a whisper, trembling, tiny fists clutching her backpack tighter. "Please, you have to help. Please don't let them get her." Caroline swallowed hard. She was no stranger to tragedy, to the stories of children lost in the cold logic of a city indifferent to suffering. But this was different. She wasn't on a board meeting today, negotiating deals with million-dollar stakes. She wasn't giving a speech to a room full of donors about hope and opportunity. She was a woman on a cracked sidewalk, staring into the wide, terrified eyes of a child who might very well be the last hope for another child who had been stolen from the world. "Okay," she said finally, her voice steadying with the clarity of someone used to making decisions when stakes were impossibly high. "Okay, we'll figure this out, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" The girl nodded, tears mingling with rain on her cheeks. I think so, but they're watching me. They'll know if I leave." Caroline's mind raced. She could call the police, surely that was the protocol. But something in the girl's expression, in the raw fear etched across her small face, told her that involving the authorities might be exactly what would put Lucy in danger. Her instincts, honed over years of navigating high-stakes business negotiations and treacherous boardrooms, kicked in. Sometimes the rules had to bend when lives were at stake. "All right," Caroline said, motioning for the girl to follow her. "We're going somewhere safe. Just stay close to me, okay?" They moved together through the rain, Caroline's heels splashing through puddles, the girl's small frame almost swallowed by the oversized backpack she clutched. They entered an unmarked brownstone, the door closing with a soft click behind them, shutting out the rain and the world for just a moment. Inside, Caroline led the girl to her private sitting room, a space of warm cream walls, soft leather chairs, and a fireplace that hadn't been lit in weeks. She gestured to the girl to sit. "What's your name?" Caroline asked gently, kneeling in front of her. "Mia," the girl whispered. "Mia Sanders." Caroline nodded, taking in her every word. "Mia, thank you for trusting me. Now I need you to tell me everything you know about Lucy." Mia's small hands shook as she removed the straps of her backpack, revealing a bundle of worn notebooks and a small, cracked phone. She opened it to a photo of a little girl with blonde hair and bright, curious eyes. Caroline's breath caught. It was Lucy. "They took her from her backyard," Mia began, her voice low. I was watching. They thought I didn't see anything. I follow them sometimes when I can, when no one's around. I know where they keep her." But her voice faltered and she looked at Caroline with wide, pleading eyes. They'll ill me if they know I've been talking. Please, don't let them know I told anyone. Caroline felt a knot of anger and fear twist in her stomach. Who could do this? Who could take a child from her own home and think anyone would stay silent? She felt the familiar fire she often summoned in boardrooms, negotiating impossible deals, now transforming into something much more primal. The fierce, protective instinct of a human being confronted with the fragility of innocence. "All right, Mia," Caroline said firmly. "We're going to get her back, but we have to be smart. Can you show me where?" Mia hesitated, glancing around the room, then nodded. She drew a small map in one of her notebooks, sketching streets and landmarks with shaky handwriting. "It's a warehouse on the river," she said. "They've got cameras, and there's a lot of them. You can't go alone." Caroline studied the map, her mind racing. She didn't need a second thought. She knew she couldn't call anyone, not yet. Not until she had a plan. Her private security team was skilled, but they were used to boardroom threats, not child abductions. This was different. She needed someone she could trust completely, someone willing to act with precision under pressure. And then she thought of him. "Do you have a place where you feel safe, Mia?" she asked. The girl shook her head. "Good, we're going to stay here tonight. I'm going to call someone who can help. You're going to be safe, I promise." Mia's eyes welled up, a mixture of relief and lingering terror. I hope so," she whispered. Caroline picked up the phone, dialing a number that hadn't been used for this kind of emergency in years. A deep, familiar voice answered. "Caroline, is everything okay?" "No," she said, her voice tight with urgency. "It's not okay. A little girl's been kidnapped. I have another girl, Mia, who knows where she is. I need you to help me get her back, and we need to move fast. They're dangerous." There was a pause on the other end of the line, heavy with the weight of unspoken understanding. "I'll be there in 30 minutes, the voice said. "Don't do anything until I get there. Keep Mia safe." Caroline hung up, heart pounding. She turned to Mia, who was clutching her notebook like a lifeline. "They're coming," Caroline said. "We just have to hold on, stay calm. Everything is going to be okay, I promise." For the first time since she had walked into the storm-soaked street, Caroline felt the rush of adrenaline, the sense that she was stepping into a world far removed from boardrooms and million-dollar deals. This was raw, real, and terrifying. She had no blueprint for what was coming, only a fierce resolve. She would not let Lucy Branson remain lost, not if she could help it. Outside, the rain continued to fall, relentless and cold. Inside, Caroline and Mia waited, their silent tension only broken by the occasional rumble of thunder, each second stretching longer than the last. Somewhere across the city, a child was trapped, and Caroline knew that the next few hours could decide everything: life, death, hope, despair. She held Mia's gaze, and in that look a silent promise was forged. No matter what, they would not fail. And then in the quiet, Mia whispered something that made Caroline's blood run cold. "They know I've been talking. I think they're coming for me." The words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. "They know I've been talking. I think they're coming for me." Caroline's breath caught. For a split second, her polished exterior cracked, revealing the raw fear underneath. She crossed the room in 3 long strides and locked the heavy oak door, sliding the brass bolt into place with a decisive click. Her heart was pounding now, not the controlled urgency of a business crisis, but the wild, primal terror of knowing something precious was under immediate threat. "Mia," she said gently but firmly, kneeling again so they were eye to eye, "listen to me. No one is coming in here. This building is secure. You're safe." Mia shook her head, curls sticking to her damp cheeks. "You don't understand. They always know. They watch everything. If I disappear for too long, they'll come looking." Caroline stood and crossed to the window, peering through the rain-streaked glass. The street below looked ordinary, too ordinary. Cars passed. A couple hurried under a shared umbrella. No one seemed out of place. But Caroline had learned long ago that danger didn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waited quietly, patiently, until you relaxed. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her stomach tightened. She answered, keeping her voice calm. "Hello." A man spoke on the other end, his tone smooth, almost polite. "Ms. Whitman, you've taken something that doesn't belong to you." Caroline's blood ran cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." A soft chuckle. "Please, don't insult us, the little girl. She wandered off. We'd like her back." "Caroline Glove," N said at Mia, whose eyes were wide with terror. Caroline turned away, lowering her voice. "If you're calling to threaten a child, you've made a very serious mistake." Another pause, then the voice hardened. "You have 30 minutes. After that, we stop being polite." The line went dead. Caroline stood frozen, phone still pressed to her ear, every nerve screaming. 30 minutes. Whoever they were organized, watching, close. Her phone buzzed again, this time a text from the man she'd called earlier. "On my way, ETA 10 minutes, stay inside." She exhaled slowly, forcing herself to think. Panic wouldn't help. Panic never helped. She turned back to Mia, softening her expression. "Hey," she said quietly, sitting beside her on the leather sofa. "You were right to come to me. You did the bravest thing anyone could do." Mia's voice was barely audible. "They hurt Lucy, not all the time, but enough." Something inside Caroline shattered. "Who are they?" Caroline asked. Mia swallowed. "They use kids, make us watch, make us do things. If we don't, they hurt someone else." Caroline felt a surge of rage so intense it made her dizzy. She reached for Mia's hand, squeezing it gently. "No one is ever going to hurt you again, not on my watch." A loud knock echoed through the house. Both of them jumped. Caroline moved quickly, checking the security monitor near the door. Relief flooded her chest. It was him. She opened the door and a tall, broad-shouldered man stepped inside, rain dripping from his jacket. His hair was streaked with gray now, his face harder than she remembered, but his eyes were the same. Sharp, steady, unshakable. "Ethan," Caroline breathed. "Caroline," he replied, scanning the room, instantly assessing exits, shadows, threats. His gaze landed on Mia and something softened in his expression. "You must be the brave one." Mia nodded hesitantly. Ethan crouched in front of her. "I'm here to help, you did good." Caroline pulled him aside, her voice low and urgent. "They called. They know she's here, gave us 30 minutes. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we don't have 30 minutes. He pulled out his phone, tapping quickly. "I've got eyes on the street. 2 vehicles parked half a block down, not locals." Caroline's pulse spiked. "They're here already." "Watching," Ethan confirmed. "Testing." He turned to Mia. "You said you know where Lucy is. Can you take us there?" Mia hesitated. "They'll kill her if we show up." "They'll kill her if we don't," Ethan said gently. "But we won't go in blind." Caroline stepped forward. "I can't let you go alone." Ethan looked at her sharply. "This isn't a board meeting, Caroline." "I know," she snapped, surprising herself. "But it's my house, my responsibility, and I'm not sitting here while children suffer." Ethan studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. "Fine, but you do exactly what I say." They moved fast. Ethan ushered Mia into a secure SUV parked in the underground garage. Caroline followed, her heart racing as the engine roared to life. As they pulled out, Caroline glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the headlights of another car flick on. "They're following us," she whispered. "I know," Ethan replied calmly. "Let them." The city blurred past, rain turning streetlights into smeared halos. Mia directed them through narrow streets, her voice shaky but precise. Finally, they reached the river, an industrial stretch lined with abandoned warehouses. "There," Mia said, pointing, "the one with the red door." Ethan slowed the car, parking in the shadows. "Stay here," he told Caroline. She grabbed his arm. "You're not going in alone." He sighed. "You always were stubborn." They approached the warehouse quietly. The air smelled of rust and damp concrete. A single light flickered near the entrance. Ethan signaled for silence, pulling a small camera from his pocket and slipping it under the door. His face darkened as he watched the feed. "There," he whispered, "Lucy." Caroline's breath hitched. On the screen, a small girl sat on a mattress, knees pulled to her chest, eyes hollow with fear. A noise echoed behind them. Footsteps. Ethan spun around, weapon raised, but Caroline froze. 3 men emerged from the shadows, smiling. "Ms. Whitman," one of them said, "you really should have stayed home." Caroline stepped forward, heart pounding but voice steady. "Let the children go. You want money? Name your price." The man laughed. "Oh, we're past money." One of the men grabbed Ethan from behind. Another lunged toward Caroline. And then everything exploded into chaos. Shouts, a gunshot, glass shattering. Mia screamed from the car. Caroline stumbled backward, hitting the cold metal of the warehouse door. Her mind raced, fear and fury colliding. This was it, the moment everything she believed in, power, wealth, control, meant nothing. Or everything. She reached into her coat pocket and pressed a button she'd hoped never to use. Sirens wailed in the distance. Ethan broke free, moving fast, decisive, ruthless. The men scattered. One of them shouted, "Get the girl." Caroline's heart stopped. Inside the warehouse, Lucy looked up, eyes widening as footsteps approached. The door creaked open, and Caroline realized, with a sickening certainty, that only one of the two children was about to make it out alive, unless someone did something drastic. The warehouse smelled of damp concrete and fear. Caroline's heels clicked against the metal catwalk as she followed Ethan, moving fast but silent, every muscle coiled like a spring. The adrenaline coursing through her veins drowned out the chill in the air. Somewhere beneath the flickering light, Lucy sat huddled on the mattress, her small frame trembling, eyes wide as if the shadows themselves had teeth. Ethan signaled and Caroline froze. Two of the men were patrolling near the back, their bulky silhouettes moving with the confidence of predators who thought themselves untouchable. She could hear her own heartbeat in the silence, loud and insistent. "Stay calm," Ethan whispered, his breath fogging in the cold air. "We only get one shot at this." Mia peeked out from behind Caroline's coat, whispering, "They'll kill her if we're too slow." Caroline swallowed, her throat tight. "I know, I won't let them." Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the edge of the metal railing, reminding herself that fear could be sharpened into clarity. They descended the stairs into the warehouse floor. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist, hiding threats in every corner. Boxes stacked high, crates with unreadable labels, rusted machinery, everything was a potential ambush. Caroline's mind raced through possibilities, distractions, escape routes, weapons, backup plans. But there was no time. The clock was ticking. Ethan crouched behind a large crate, signaling Caroline to follow. She obeyed instinctively. He peeked around the edge, eyes narrowing. "Lucy's there," he whispered, pointing toward the far corner where the little girl sat. "Two men guarding her, one's watching the door, the other by the wall." Caroline's stomach twisted. The men were bigger, stronger, and they had no hesitation in using force. She glanced at Ethan. "How do we get past them?" Ethan's eyes glinted. "We create a distraction. You ready?" She nodded, though every nerve screamed against it. Ethan's hand moved like lightning. A small device clattered against the floor near a stack of crates on the opposite side of the warehouse. The men's heads snapped toward the noise. Ethan seized the moment, moving with terrifying precision. Caroline followed, heart pounding, adrenaline sharpening her every sense. A gunshot rang out. Caroline ducked instinctively, a shard of glass cutting her cheek. Blood mingled with the sweat on her temple, but she ignored it. Ethan reached Lucy first, sweeping her into his arms as Caroline took cover behind a crate. The men recovered quickly. One lunged toward Ethan, but Caroline stepped out, grabbing a heavy pipe from the floor. She swung it with all her strength, hitting the man squarely in the chest. He staggered back, giving Ethan the crucial seconds he needed. "Go," Ethan shouted. Lucy clung to him, her tiny arms wrapped around his neck. Caroline met Ethan's eyes. "I'm right behind you." They moved in unison, ducking and weaving through the crates. Another gunshot cracked through the air, and Caroline's heart jumped into her throat. Ethan's hand lashed out, knocking the gun aside. They were close, so close. And then the third man appeared from a shadowed corner, blocking their exit. Caroline froze, panic threatening to paralyze her. But Lucy's terrified eyes met hers, and everything sharpened into focus. She swung the pipe again, striking the man in the arm. He grunted and stumbled, and Ethan seized the opportunity, pushing Lucy ahead toward the emergency exit. Caroline followed, heart hammering in her chest. The night outside hit them like a wave, cold, heavy, and dripping wet. The rain soaked Caroline to the bone, but she barely noticed. Lucy clung to Ethan, shivering, while Mia ran to Caroline, tears streaking her rain-soaked face. "They're gone," Mia whispered. Ethan shook his head. "Not yet, they'll regroup, but right now we have to move." Caroline pulled out her phone, dialing the police. "We have them. We've got Lucy. They're trying to follow us. We need units here now." The dispatcher's voice was calm but firm. "Units are en route, ma'am. Please stay with the children until help arrives." Minutes stretched like hours as Caroline, Ethan, and the girls moved through the empty streets. Every shadow seemed a threat, every passing car a potential ambush. Caroline's mind raced, calculating distances, escape routes, anything that could keep them safe. Finally, a pair of police cars pulled up, lights spinning, sirens cutting through the rain. Officers jumped out, securing the Rhea guiding them into the vehicles. Caroline helped Lucy and Mia into the back of a cruiser, wrapping blankets around them. Lucy's small body shook violently as she whispered, I thought I'd never get out." Caroline knelt beside her, brushing damp hair from her face. "You're safe now, sweetie, you're safe." Mia clung to Caroline's arm, tears flowing freely. "We did it," she whispered, voice trembling. We really did it." Caroline looked up at Ethan, who gave her a small nod. Exhaustion had taken hold, but so had a deep, unshakable relief. For the first time in what felt like days, the terror ebbed. At the station, detectives took statements while Caroline stayed close to the girls. Lucy's parents arrived, frantic, and Caroline felt the weight of their relief wash over her like a tidal wave. They clutched their daughter, crying, kissing her face, whispering promises of safety. Caroline's chest tightened. She had saved a life tonight, but the darkness that had almost swallowed it still lingered. Back in the car, after giving statements and ensuring both children were safe, Caroline sat in silence beside Ethan. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and quiet. "You were incredible," Ethan said finally, breaking the silence. Caroline shook her head. "No, you were incredible. I just held on." He glanced at her, eyes serious. "Holding on sometimes isn't enough. You have to step forward. You did that tonight. You saved them." Caroline exhaled, letting herself feel it, the adrenaline leaving her body, leaving only the raw, heavy relief. But there was still an ache, a sense of gravity settling in her chest. The men who had taken Lucy hadn't vanished forever. They were out there waiting. And Caroline knew, because she had always known, that this was only the beginning. The days after the rescue blurred into an uneasy rhythm of media frenzy, police reports, and private reflection. Caroline Whitman, the millionaire venture capitalist who had built her empire on deals, projections, and control, now found herself caught in an entirely different world, a world governed by fear, courage, and raw human fragility. Lucy was home with her parents, and the relief that washed over them every time Caroline checked in could have filled oceans. Mia, too, remained under Caroline's protection until authorities confirmed the threats were neutralized. But the images of the warehouse, of the rain-soaked faces of the children, of the men who had stalked them through the streets, clung to her like shadows she could not shake. Sitting in her study late one night, Caroline stared at the rain sliding down her window. The room was dark except for the soft glow of her desk lamp, illuminating scattered papers and the phone she kept within arm's reach. She had thought she understood power, boardroom dominance, influence, money, but this had been something entirely different. This was power measured in seconds, in choices that could mean life or death, and she had felt it like fire in her veins. Her phone buzzed, a message from Mia. "Thank you, I feel safe, because of you." Caroline smiled, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. She typed back, "You were brave too, never forget that." The phone slipped from her fingers as a knock echoed through her mansion. She rose, smoothing her coat and walking toward the door. Ethan was there, wet from the drizzle outside, his expression as stoic as ever, but with a softness reserved only for moments like these. "You didn't sleep?" Caroline asked. "I don't sleep when kids are involved," he replied. A hint of a smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. You did good, better than good. Caroline shook her head. No, Ethan, I did what anyone would do, I didn't freeze. He studied her, eyes piercing yet gentle. That's why you saved them, not because you didn't freeze, but because you acted despite fear. That's courage. She exhaled slowly, letting the weight of it sink in. Courage. Action, life and death, decisions she had never been forced to make in her controlled, predictable existence. And yet here she was, irrevocably changed. The media continued to swarm around the story, framing her as a hero, but Caroline found little comfort in the spotlight. The hero narrative felt hollow, disconnected from the nights spent crouched in a shadowed warehouse, listening to a child cry, wondering if she had waited too long. Money couldn't buy those moments back. Influence couldn't erase them. Only presence, only sheer human determination had mattered. One afternoon, Mia arrived at her mansion, timid but smiling. Caroline had insisted she come over to help her feel safe and valued. The girl carried a small bundle of drawings, portraits of the night Caroline and Ethan had saved Lucy, little sketches of herself and her friends. Caroline, Mia said, shyly handing the drawings over, I wanted you to have these so you remember. Caroline's throat tightened as she held papers. Each sketch was crude but full of emotion, capturing the fear, the hope, and the eventual relief. She realized then that the bond formed in moments of terror was unlike any other. Money, status, or power could never create it. It was forged in fire. Ethan appeared behind them, leaning against the doorframe. She's got a talent, he said to Caroline. Not for drawing alone, she sees things others don't. That's why she survived. Caroline nodded, thinking of the courage it had taken for Mia to step forward in the first place. Without her knowledge, without her bravery, Lucy might never have been found. It was a humbling reminder that heroism could come from the smallest, most unexpected places. Weeks later, Caroline returned to her usual routine, but nothing felt the same. Board meetings, charity galas, and investment pitches continued, but the veneer of control she had always relied on felt fragile. She had stared into the face of evil, and though she had emerged victorious, she knew the world was more complicated than spreadsheets and profit margins. She began allocating more of her foundation's resources toward missing children programs, security initiatives, and mentorship for vulnerable youth. It wasn't just philanthropy. It was accountability, action, and the acknowledgement that her wealth and influence could protect those who could not protect themselves. One evening, Caroline sat in her study again, reviewing reports from her foundation. Ethan leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. You've changed, he said softly. I have, she admitted. I used to think life was about control, about managing risks I could see and predict. But now I know it's about choosing to act when the stakes are highest, even when you're terrified. Ethan smiled faintly, nodding. And that's why you saved Lucy. That's why you saved Mia too, not because you had a plan, but because you refused to do nothing. Caroline allowed herself a rare smile, feeling the tight knot of tension in her chest finally ease. The city outside shimmered with lights reflected on wet streets, a world that felt both beautiful and terrifying in its complexity. And somewhere in that city, a little girl slept safely, protected by courage, resilience, and the improbable choices of strangers who had refused to turn away. The phone buzzed again, this time a simple text from Mia. I miss you. Can we see each other soon? Caroline's lips curved into a gentle smile. She typed back. Absolutely. Heroes need a day off too. We'll see each other soon. For the first time in weeks, Caroline felt peace. The terror, the adrenaline, the heartbreak, it was all still there, a shadow at the edge of her consciousness, but it no longer controlled her. She had learned something essential. The world was unpredictable, dangerous, and sometimes cruel, but courage, action, and empathy could carve a path through the darkness. And in that knowledge, she found something more valuable than money, more powerful than influence, and far more enduring than any title. The quiet, unshakable truth that when you refuse to turn away from fear, when you choose to act in the name of life, you can change everything. The city's lights flickered, rain began again softly against the window, and Caroline Whitman, millionaire, strategist, protector, sat back in her chair, finally letting herself breathe. Outside, life continued, complex and unpredictable, but inside she carried a newfound certainty. Some choices define you not in the quiet corridors of power, but in the storm-soaked streets where courage meets necessity and where humanity refuses to be silenced. And somewhere deep inside, Caroline knew this was only the beginning of a life forever altered by one night, two brave children, and the irrevocable power of doing the right thing, no matter the cost. The storm would come again, but this time she was ready,